Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. Monday, a game here. We got a lot of kind of injury news. Some of it out of the way. Some of it we do have to keep an eye on as the day goes on. We were talking before the show. This has just been one of the worst injury periods of time in our recent memory. And that's saying something because we've had some really bad stretches.
Yeah. First off, you just buried the lead here. It's Kobe Day.
Oh,
It
sorry.
is. It is. It's Kobe Day, and we get the Warriors and Lakers. So, yeah, screw the injuries, screw everything else. It's Kobe Day. We're just gonna talk about our favorite Kobe moments all podcast, right?
I mean, one of my favorites was when he played Utah in his last game and he was only and jacked up 40 shots.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out this morning, like, the same people that faded Kobe in his last game are the ones that are going to fade the Warriors and Lakers on Kobe night.
Are you really buying into a narrative here that this is just going to heighten the potential of this game?
Oh, hell yeah, I am, because you know exactly what's going to happen. Like, right before the game, Kobe's going to, like, go out and he's going to pull LeBron, and he's going to pull his, like, shirt over his mouth, and he's going to whisper to freaking Lonzo Ball some stuff about doing you and just being aggressive, and then he's going to go talk to Durant and all these guys, and then everyone's just going to go bananas.
Well, unfortunately, we have 8, 9 games here that we got to get through before we get to that game, but we'll save the best for last there.
Nah, we don't have to talk about those games.
Boston, Indiana here first. Boston 3-point favorites. A spot that I'm not highly interested in. I mean, I don't mind some of the Boston side. Like, there are some good spots to attack in this one. Al Horford's kind of the main guy that I'm looking at. Decent cash game center on tonight's slate. Like, he's fairly mid-priced. Good spot here. Indiana does struggle against both power forwards and centers.
Yeah, I do like Horford a lot. It's a spot where he actually had a solid outing against this team last time out. I think I prefer him a little more if he starts at center. So if they start Aaron Baines, I think I'm probably a little bit off of Horford. But if they go small and start like Marcus Smart or something like that, I think Horford is an excellent option. Other than that, like, it's Kyrie, who's a little bit too expensive, I think, but still an excellent cash game option. It's just those two guys, and like that's it from this game.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in like the Jaylen Browns or Jason Tatum's here just because the ceilings really aren't terribly high. And we got a full slate of options on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if Tatum starts at the 4, you can look there. But yeah, it's just I don't know. He just hasn't really been hitting his shots recently, and that's kind of concerning. Maybe he's hitting that like rookie wall, but like, I don't know. Like, again, he's a GPP option if he starts at the 4, but other than that, it's just Horford and Kyrie for me.
Yep. Not on the Indiana side of things. I mean, I'll never say no to kind of Victor Oladipo. Obviously, tough spot here against Boston, but I mean, 24 field goal attempts over the last 5 games. Like, his minutes are sky high. His potential for fantasy points has just been insane. Like, it's just hard to say no to him in some of these spots. And I think he'll go a little bit overlooked tonight. I
mean, it's pretty easy for me to say no just because the Boston defense is just so ridiculously good. Like, I mean, they're like second right now in the NBA, second or third. So I guess in GPP is fine. But I mean, what is he? 8,700 on DraftKings. And let's see, on FanDuel, he is 9,300. There's a lot of guys that we're going to talk about that are just in better spots. Like, he's going to need like a 60-point ceiling game here to be a good option, and I don't see that happening against Boston.
Anyone else here?
Nope.
I mean, I guess I have a little bit of interest in Thaddeus Young. We've seen Boston bottom 10 in defense efficiency against power forwards. I mean, he's got to get a couple of steals to kind of knock up that value. But I mean, I guess he's still cheap enough for me to consider if he kind of fits that need. But there are a lot of cheap power forwards as well tonight.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is another scenario where like you're relying on unsustainable blocks and steals from a guy like Thaddeus Young for him to really hit value. I mean, the only game over his last 4 where he's even like come close to paying or like actually paid off his salary is against OKC, and he had a combined 10 blocks and steals. So like, unless he's getting just a massive amount of peripheral stats, like there's just not a lot of value in him.
Let's move on here. Knicks and Hornets. We got to obviously watch Porzingis in this one. He says he's going to likely play. It's more on the likely side here, but I don't really trust it here tonight. I'm kind of worried about Porzingis.
Yeah, I think the beat writer said it's more likely than not that he plays, but he is a true game time decision. Luckily, this is one of the earliest games, so we'll have that news prior to lock. Um, if he plays, I'm not really on him. Like his price is cheap enough where you could like I guess look at him in GPPs, but it's kind of a tough matchup. Charlotte not terrible on defense in the paint, like, coming off a knee injury. I don't know that I would necessarily go there. Like I'm more interested in the next side of this game if Porzingis sits than I am if he plays.
Yeah, and obviously, we've seen, Michael Beasley be a guy who steps in and plays pretty well, and Porzingis is absent. Like, I don't mind him at his price if Porzingis does sit again.
Oh yeah, like obviously you kind of have to be a little concerned about foul trouble with Beasley because he is a guy that like if he could get in foul trouble pretty easily. But when we saw it against OKC, it just went freaking bonkers. Like he had 30 real points, played 38 minutes, took 18 shots. Like he was defended by Andre Roberson a bunch of times, and he just didn't care. Like he'd pull up in Andre's face and just sink one over him. Like he didn't give a damn about Carmelo's revenge game. He went off like. I don't see like he's 4,600 on DraftKings. FanDuel probably has him at like 8K at this point, but like he's a guy that you just kind of plug and play whenever Kristaps is out. So like I really do think Beasley's a solid option, even though this may be a little bit of a down spot for him. Like usage is so high for him. Yeah, he's 5,900 on FanDuel, so I was close. I was close.
As far as our guys go, Cantor, Lee, I mean, backcourt, do you have any interest here?
Kind of like Lee a little bit again. If Kristaps is out, like he's been really good over the last couple games. He's 6 of 10 from 3-point range over the last 2 games, so that's pretty impressive. But yeah, I kind of like him if Kristaps sits.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes are going to be there. Like, he's got a fairly safe floor. Prices come up to a little bit. I think you need a little bit more out of him, but I mean, if Porzingis sits, he certainly can get there.
Yeah, definitely.
On the Charlotte side of things, I don't have a lot of interest here tonight with the Charlotte side. I mean, Kemba Walker's only 7,100 on DK. Like, it's a decent spot for him. Put up nearly 40 fantasy points last time these two played. So Kemba's kind of really the only guy that I'm taking a look at.
Kimba's interesting on DraftKings, not as interesting on FanDuel just because of price. Like 7,100 for Kemba Walker. We're entering like dangerously close to the like you just have to play him at that price territory. Like I know he's battling a wrist injury, hasn't been shooting the ball very well over his last 3 games, but like this is a guy that's normally over like 8K. Like he's usually 7,800 to 8,200 against the Knicks, who struggle against point guards. Like this is an excellent spot for him. And if Kristaps Porzingis sits, it's even better because they're lacking a rim protector there. So like I don't. I don't have a lot of interest in him right now if Kristaps plays, but if we get news that Porzingis is out, like I'm locking him in as one of my core options and just moving on because that price I just can't ignore it.
Yeah. Do you like anyone else in Charlotte?
I'm afraid to fade Nick Batum at this price. Like I've been off of him the past few games because he hadn't been shooting the ball very well. He comes out against Portland. I guess you could call that a revenge game for him. So maybe I'm seeing a little bit too much here, but shot 17 times, shot 53% from the floor, 56% from three. Like if he's going to be shooting this well, 5,700 on DraftKings is way too cheap for Batum. Like, I mean, that's really really cheap.
Yeah, and not to mention the minutes have been, through the roof here, like 38, 37, 34 of the last 3 games. Those were nice to see, although Batum, I mean, if he's fully healthy, like even at 38 minutes, like, I can look at him for a heavy minutes role.
Yeah, like I think in cash games he's an excellent option just because like I mean there's a lot of guys in that price range that are going to be more popular than him across multiple positions. Like I don't know, like this is a spot where you could get him for pretty low ownership, and I mean he's got a safe floor. Like with that amount of minutes, like he's pretty darn safe. Like you don't need that much production out of him in cash games, and like, if he gets you that 38 fantasy point upside at 5,700, that's amazing in GPPs.
Yeah. Dwight Howard, any interest here?
Not really. Like it's not a terribly great spot. Knicks excellent rebounding team, excellent rim protecting team. I'm fine if you want to go there in GPPs, but at that price, like I just don't have a ton of interest. There's so many other good spots to go with tonight.
I'm in agreement there. Miami and Atlanta, a game that I know you and I are both really looking at because there's just a ton of value in this game.
Yeah, first thing I'm gonna say, like I'm taking the over on this game. Like I think it's down to like 205 and a half. Like I think this game actually goes off and there because of all the injuries to both of these teams, there are a lot of excellent value plays to attack here.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking, Whiteside obviously out, James Johnson out. We've seen Justice Winslow. He's questionable for tonight's game. Like that front court is really limited right now, and there might be some ugly names that come out of this one, but I think the fantasy scores will actually be quite pleasant.
Yeah, I wrote up one of those ugly names. And I guess if we want to start in the front court, like you're just gonna see a bunch of Kelly Olynyk and Bam Adebayo and Jordan Mickey. Like these three guys are going to eat up pretty much all the minutes at the 4 and the 5, especially if Justice Winslow sits. Um, I wrote up Jordan Mickey like at 3,200 on DraftKings. Like he's not a good basketball player, but like he's been outstanding in these last two games, kind of playing extra minutes. I mean, we saw against the Clippers 27 minutes, 27 fantasy points, against Charlotte 15 minutes, almost 20 fantasy points. Like peripherals are there. He's scoring pretty well. Like at 3,200, if you're going to give me 24 to maybe even 30 minutes of this guy against Atlanta, like lock that in. Like I will take that all freaking day long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind hammering the Atlanta front court here. Bad rebounding team. I mean, at only 3,200, like it is a tough day, especially on a night where there are a couple studs that you definitely want to get into your lineups. Like it kind of sets up nicely for a stars and scrubs here with some of these guys.
Yeah, and Jordan Mickey is definitely a scrub. That's for darn sure. But like he's a guy that again at 3,200, I think he's 3,500 on FanDuel. That's a tough price to pass up
Yeah,
and
really.
an excellent matchup.
Yeah, and you mentioned Olnick and Adebayo. I mean, I think they're both still in play here for me as well. If you want to take some shots, I'll sprinkle them in here and there, but neither of them are really going to be a core play for me.
I like Olynyk a lot here. We saw him in this same spot last time out. Actually, put up a solid outing. If we don't get the news that Justice Winslow is out, that does concern me a little bit. But without James Johnson and without Hassan Whiteside on the floor, Kelly Olynyk has 24.7% usage rate and 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Again, against an Atlanta team that can't defend, that can't rebound, like he's pretty much in line for like probably like a 2010 double double here. And his price is way too cheap. Like I don't necessarily know that Bam Adebayo is going to see extra run here because Atlanta doesn't really have a traditional big man. And that's kind of the matchup you would expect him to play in. So, like, I think this is where you see Kelly Olynyk, if he can stay out of foul trouble, and Jordan Mickey pick up the majority of the minutes. So, those are the two guys I would look at most. But I mean, if you really wanted to, you could use all three. Because I mean, like, there's no one else really to play in the front court if Justice Winslow sits.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at some of the other guys here, I know Josh Richardson's a guy that we're both taking a look at. Been a little bit of a pain in the ass to figure out this year, but he's in a nice little stretch here. He's finally shooting the ball well. He's over 50% in the last 5 games. The minutes are going to be over 30. Like, it's a really good spot here for Richardson. I also know because Richardson's passed and using Richardson quite a few times that I'm not forgetting that the floor is still rather low.
The floor is like 5 fantasy points for Josh Richardson, but like you really can't just overlook the production he's had as of late. I wrote about it in the GPP article, but he's played at least 30 minutes in 9 consecutive games. He has at least 30 fantasy points in 3 of those games, multiple blocks and steals in 5 of those games. It's a good spot. Like Atlanta's allowing opponents to notch 8.1 steals and 4.9 blocks. It's 21% usage rate and 0.87 fantasy points per minute with these injured players off the floor. I could go on and on about like more like how many ways Josh Richardson could just destroy Atlanta tonight. We already saw him go off against them last time out. Like, it's a great spot for Richardson, and like 4,800 on DraftKings. That's a really good price for a guy that's just kind of had a bunch of upside recently.
Yeah. Drogic Waiters, any interest here tonight?
All of those guys are fine. Like I think Dragic's in an excellent spot. I really hope he can finally have a good game because he's been just so bad recently. Went for 31 fantasy points last time out against this Hawks team. You would expect with 31% usage rate that he could put up a good outing. If not, like I would start to wonder if he's even healthy if he can't put up a good game here.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys I feel like is cheap, and I'm going to be looking at quite a bit because he is cheap, and it's such a great spot for him against Atlanta and Schroeder. But yeah, Dragic just hasn't been kind of the same guy, and I feel like this year in general, like he hasn't attacked as much as I've wanted him to be, and I just think overall, I'm going to use him, but once again, like I can't get too excited here.
It's one of those things where like I feel like he's an excellent cash game play because he doesn't have a ton of upside, but at the same time, he's a terrible cash game play because he's incredibly risky. And so that would make him a GPP option. But again, he doesn't have a lot of upside. So I don't really know where I want to use him, but it's a great matchup for him. And he should, in theory, be able to go off against Dennis Schroeder and the Hawks. So if you want to use them in all formats, go for it. I think there's guys that I'm going to look at kind of in that same price range that I like a little bit more, but it should be a good spot for him. And I think on FanDuel at 6,100, I like him more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings.
Yep. On the Atlanta side of things here, once again, I mean, front court's been dealing with issues. We've kind of been playing a little bit more stable late. Obviously, Collins back, Ilyasova. Collins is a guy that you're interested in. Obviously, you wrote him up in your GPP article today.
Love John Collins here. Just like Miami's been terrible without Whiteside and without Johnson on the floor. I put a bunch of statistics in my article, so I'll leave some of that out so people can go click on that and give it a read later this afternoon. But it is a great spot for him, and I'm wondering if people are going to not be on him because they don't realize that he's back and like they're worried about his minutes because like his last two games, 20 and 24 minutes, like if people are going to be thinking that his minutes are not secure because, he's been volatile recently, like I think that's a bad way to look at it because he just came back from almost a month off, or 2 or 3 weeks off. So like, I think that's why his minutes have been down, not necessarily that they're insecure. It is a little worrisome, like all of his value against Memphis, like he put up 28 fantasy points, but that came on the back of like 6 combined blocks and steals. Like he is a guy that gets a bunch of blocks and steals, but I think against the Heat tonight, like I think you can feel pretty safe in his points. There's another spot kind of like Kelly Olynyk, like a 10 point rebound game could come out of him, and like he has just a ton of upside in the spot.
Yeah, I mean, he put up 34 fantasy points in 18 minutes last time these two met. Like, those are huge numbers.
Yeah, and I don't know off the top. Let me look. I think Whiteside even played in that game. No, Whiteside was out in that game. So Johnson did play. Where's James Johnson? Johnson did play in that game. So like that would take away a little bit of the upside from John Collins. So if you're telling me no James Johnson, no Whiteside, John Collins in the middle, like hello, like just plug him in and move on.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in anyone else here? Schroeder, Bazemore, Prince at all?
I'm not riding the train with the Bazemore games or like the Taurean Prince games. Like if you want to take a shot on either one in GPPs, go for it. But like I'm just tired of trying to predict which one of these guys is going to go off.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's better guys, especially at their price tags. I mean, both are 5,800 on DK. There's other guys around there that I'd rather use.
Yeah, in cash games, there's definitely guys that I would rather use. In GPPs, again, go for it. Like build a lineup with one. Like if you're doing like 20 lineups or something, like have one Prince lineup and one Bazemore lineup if you want.
Yep. Anyone I'm missing there for Atlanta?
No, not really. Like I don't really want it. No, just no.
So it's the Atlanta. It's their mascot's going to be John Collins tonight. He's going to be the only one on the floor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Philly, Chicago here. This one, obviously, we got news of Embiid sitting. Tonight we got that out early. Obviously, a great spot here for Philly. I mean, it kind of gave us a lot to kind of break down here, and we got it early. So this is one's going to be pretty straightforward tonight. At least we can hope.
That's a game I like a lot. Like I just have to say, like, Embiid resting was like the most obvious thing in the world. Like, I think I tweeted that out like in the second overtime last time, like on Friday or whatever, when that triple overtime game was going on. Like, there is no way that he was going to play tonight. Like, I was like the most obvious rest spot for him. But because he's out, that opens up a lot in that front court. And I think that really starts with Dario Saric. Like, we know Saric just goes off whenever Embiid is out. A bunch of extra rebound opportunities, bunch of extra scoring opportunities, and with no Trevor Booker either to back him up, like there's a decent amount of minutes that Saric is going to play. I mean, he's 5,800 on DraftKings. He is 6,500 on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings, like you just plug him in and move on in all formats. FanDuel, it's a little bit of a different story, but I mean, he's basically like 32, 35 point floor in this spot.
Yeah, Sarge is a guy that I'm using quite a bit of here tonight. You mentioned the price difference. I think that is something to note for FanDuel and DraftKings. Not that I don't like him on FanDuel, but there are still guys that are probably about 2,000 cheaper that I'll still be looking at the power forward position. Sarge I have a ton of interest in. Obviously, I think Ben Simmons is still a guy that you can build around. I feel like he hasn't been quiet, but the fantasy buzz around him has been a little bit quiet of late. So I mean, I kind of like him here in this spot, even though he is expensive. And we've seen he's averaged 18, 8, and 8 without Embiid this year. He can rack up those peripheral stats. He's playing a ton of minutes. So, like, I mean, you can argue the price tag, but I still a guy that I'm looking at quite a bit.
Yeah, I like him a little bit here. Like at 9,600 on DraftKings, there's a lot of guys just for a few hundred more or a few hundred more or less that I would rather go with. But you can't really deny that the usage and whatnot's going to be there for him. I mean, almost 30% usage with Embiid and Booker are off the floor this season. It's a good spot. Like, I think I'm more interested in the Rashawn Holmes. It's going to be Rashawn Holmes chalk day. Like, he's just going to be mega chalk. And unfortunately, when Rashawn Holmes is chalk, you can't really fade him even in GPPs. Like, he's basically just a lock for like 30 fantasy points, and at 4,100 on DraftKings, like you'll take that all day long.
It's funny because I mean, it comes on a night where I don't feel like the center spot is particularly great either. You know, like I don't think you have a huge advantage if you wanted to fade him on FanDuel, like unless there's a guy in that top tier that really goes off. But I mean, I'm not really seeing it tonight.
No, I'm not either. And like 4,500 on FanDuel, there's your value center of the day for the most part. So I don't even know. Yeah, so none of the Miami guys except for Adebayo are listed as center on FanDuel, and he's 5K. I'll take Rashawn Holmes at 4,500 on FanDuel over Adebayo all day long. So he's the guy that I want the most outside of Saric.
As far as other guys go here, like I don't mind JJ Redick, continues to play well against his Bulls defense. Like I feel like he's at a fair price tonight.
Yeah, pretty much everyone from Philly's in play. If I were to rank them, like Redick's obviously in a good spot. If I were to rank them, I think it would be Saric, Holmes, Simmons, Redick, and then Covington.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't have any interest in Amir Johnson, who might sneak in and get some minutes. Do you?
No, I actually need to look. Like, I feel like let me pull it up real quick. I feel like Amir Johnson goes off against the Bulls, but that I might be making that up. Let me pull it up. Stat views real quick.
We need like elevator music to kind of fill in.
I mean, my keyboard typing isn't enough. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'm kind of making it up. Last 3 seasons, 22, 21, 9, 47, 18, and 13. So only 3 games where you'd be happy with the production. So, but I don't know. Like if you need to go cheaper than Rashawn Holmes here, you can do it. Rashawn Holmes is the guy you want for the most part, though.
Yep. With the on the Chicago side, I have some interest in Chris Dunn here tonight, as I seemingly kind of always feel like I do. I mean, the minutes are going to be right around 30 minutes as long as he stays in the game. It doesn't foul out. I mean, those steals, I mean, averaging 2 this season per game, averaging 2.4 over the last 5 games. Like, Dunn kind of never gets into that next price tier where I start to go, I don't like him as much.
He's getting close, like almost 7K on DraftKings, and he is 7,500 on FanDuel. Definitely a good cash game option on both sites. Foul trouble obviously does concern me a little bit, especially if he's going to end up trying to defend Ben Simmons. But I mean, you can't really deny the upside at that price. Like he's a guy that you can definitely look at. I think, as much as I hate to say it, I think David Nwaba is the guy that I'm really interested in from the Chicago side of things.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's still really cheap, averaging 30 minutes over his last five. I mean, he's another one. Like he's been the best small forward and when healthy this year.
Yeah, and he's basically spending all his time playing either like shooting guard or small forward. Sometimes he's relieving Justin Holiday, sometimes it's Denzel Valentine, but it's just a good spot for him. Like he should be able to rack up the rebounds and points here. So I do like him a lot. I guess the status of Markkanen's going to change the outlook for this game. If Markkanen plays, I don't know that you can really look at Mirotic or Portis at their prices, but if we get news that Markkanen is going to be out, like both Mirotic and Portis are two guys that you can pretty much consider like elite options. Like both have been just outstanding recently, filling in all the minutes in the front court and Markkanen's place.
Yeah, in Portis, you got like a $1,200 discount from Mirotic, and you got similar upside.
Yeah, I actually used both of them in my lineup the other night, and both of them had huge games. Like I was worried this was against Milwaukee. Like I was worried. I was so tilted.
Mirotic fouled pretty early.
Yeah, I was so tilted because he had like foul trouble. Like the first 2 minutes, he was already out because of foul trouble, and then like I was like, "Crap, this is gonna suck." But hey, I have Portis, so that'll make up for it. And then like both of them went off, and I was like,
Yeah, both are in play for me tonight. I'm
"Oh
with
yeah,
you.
yeah." As long as Markkanen is out, like both are in play.
Yeah. As far as anyone else goes, I mean, I don't have an interest. You mentioned Holiday. Like, I guess I don't mind him. Philly does struggle against shooting guards, but as we've kind of said before, mainly he's more of just a shooter.
Yeah, it's weird. He actually got some assists and rebounds last game against Milwaukee. He had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and he still only had 27 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Shot 2 of 10 from the floor. Um, sorry, I'm getting news on my phone, but it's not about one of tonight's games. But he's a guy again in GPPs. Go for it.
Yep. Let's move on here. Utah and Houston. I'll start with this Utah side here first. Obviously, Gobert is out. We know that. Derek Favors popping in and out of concussion protocol like he's an NFL quarterback. So who the hell knows what's going on? He's obviously someone that we do need to keep an eye on. But for this Jazz, I mean, they are pretty limited right now.
Yeah, the Jazz are basically pulling a Tom Savage with Derek Favors right now. Like, I don't know how that happens. Like, he goes from being questionable and like practicing getting shots up and shoot around to being out with a concussion. And Raul Neto, who's been in the concussion protocol for like 2 weeks now, is still out with that concussion, and Favors is questionable with his. That's a situation we need to keep an eye on. I don't know that we'll have news early enough to really act on it. It's gonna play such an important role in how you construct your lineups tonight. I really want Favors to play so I don't have to sit here and like battle with the decision to fade Ekpe, Udo, or any of these guys. So like I hope Favors plays, and if he does, like that price way too cheap for a guy that's been just ridiculously good whenever Gobert has been out.
Yeah, I mean, if we get the news that he's 100% ready to go, like I have no issue with him. Otherwise, for me, like Donovan Mitchell at 6,700 is interesting given his usage and spot here. I mean, averaging 36 fantasy points over the last 5 games. Like the shot attempts are there. I guess I'm just falling in love with Donovan Mitchell here, as I think a lot of people are.
My biggest concern with Donovan Mitchell is that Chris Paul is on the other side of the ball. Now I know that Mitchell doesn't necessarily play point guard all the time, but with that amount of usage and how good he's been, like I would expect Mike D'Antoni to try to kind of scheme him out. And if that's going to happen, like you have to imagine guys like Rodney Hood and Joe Johnson and Thabo Sefolosha are going to have to pick up some of the offense. So I think in cash games, Mitchell's fine. Like just the pure amount of usage and production he's had recently is really tough to overlook. But in GPPs, like I think you definitely want to consider Rodney Hood or like I mentioned, Thabo Cephalosha or Joe Johnson.
And I kind of, if Capella sits out tonight, I think that kind of is a little bit interesting here because of how Utah can line up. Like we've seen them go small. We can see them throw, Cephalosha at the 4. And obviously the status of Favors, like the lines can kind of go either way here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the status of Favors kind of plays a very important role on how you attack this game. If he plays, you're playing Favors and like Mitchell and Rodney Hood, and if Favors sits, you're looking at Udo, you're looking at Jerebko, you're looking at Tabo and Joe Johnson, and all those guys kind of come into play without Favors.
Yeah. I mean, definitely keep an eye on it. I think we can revisit this situation later on in the day because this is one that is going to have to unfold, and hopefully we get that before 7. As far as other guys go here, I mean, Ricky Rubio, the minutes have been trickling down. His price has as well. Hasn't really played well against Houston this year. Like he's cheap. I think people might consider him, but I'm off of him.
He's fine for GPPs, cash games. There's just so many better options. Like the only other guy that I would even consider would be Joe Ingles. And like with him, it's just the fact that this is a fast paced game and he could get a lot of shots up. That kind of makes him interesting, but you're not really getting anything out of him outside of a few assists, a lot of points, and maybe a couple steals.
Yep. On the Houston side, I mean, yeah, I don't care about the Utah matchup. Like, this is a team that's just matchup proof for me. Like, I have no problem just going back to the well with Paul or Harden and getting these guys in.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love Chris Paul. Like, especially after he's coming off a game where, like, I don't know if people actually went back and looked at how he ended up against Milwaukee, but if I recall correctly, at like the end of the first half, he had like 9 fantasy points or something. I was tilted. And then like the next day I look and he ended up with almost 41 fantasy points. So I realize that people are going to consider like Chris Paul and James Harden as negative correlations, but I mean, Chris Paul and James Harden have both been just going bananas recently. Like, I think you can look at both of them. Chris Paul's price at 9K on DraftKings, still way too cheap for a guy that has 50, 60 fantasy point upside. He's like 10K on FanDuel, so it's a little tougher there. I absolutely love him in the spot. We saw him just go off against Utah last time out, 58 fantasy points. Even in blowouts, these guys are playing a bunch of minutes. So, like Chris Paul, excellent spot. And James Harden, 10-5 on DraftKings.
Yeah. I mean, he's $1,000 cheaper than some of these other guys that are up there. Durant, I mean, he's cheaper than Westbrook. Like, that's too low. And I get that they're factoring the matchup, but that's too low for a guy who's averaging 55 fantasy points over his last 5.
Yeah, and a guy that's averaging 63 fantasy points per game against the Jazz.
Yeah. So you mentioned the correlation between the two. I think there's a viable outcome that they can get you 105, 110, even more fantasy points combined tonight.
Yeah, like I'm having a really, really hard time. Like I don't like paying up for. I know this is a night where stars and scrubs is heavily in play. I don't like necessarily paying up on DraftKings for 2 studs. And with that being the case, like I have a really hard time locking in Kevin Durant over James Harden in the spot. Like huge price difference. It's just clearly just a huge mistake by DraftKings part, like leaving Harden that cheap. Like I think a realistic outcome could be like 63, 64, 65 fantasy points for Harden and like 65 fantasy points for Durant. And in that case, I'll gladly take Harden over Durant in the spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. Secondary guys, do you have any interest here?
Not really. Like, Capella's status is going to be something to pay attention to. We saw, I think PJ Tucker got the start last game. You'll see some Tucker and Anderson at the 5 minutes, especially if Favors is out. Nene might be the value center to go to if you're fading Rashawn Holmes. Like we saw against Milwaukee, 20 minutes for Nene, 26 fantasy points. 18 minutes against this Utah team last time out, had 24 fantasy points. I will take that all day long for 3,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I don't mind him. This is one of those things where I will be kind of looking at the front court fill-ins here because I don't really have that much of interest in like Ariza or Gordon or Anderson here tonight.
No, I don't really either.
Portland, Minnesota. This is one, we have Jimmy Butler stats that we'll need to keep an eye on, but we'll start with this Portland side here first. I don't mind Damian Lillard and GPPs just for the usage and the fact that he is kind of that pivot away from Chris Paul. And also the fact that Minnesota's been pretty average on defense this season.
Yeah, I think you're looking at Damian Lillard, who's just an excellent play here. And you mentioned Jimmy Butler status. If he sits, like I would be really close to going all in on CJ McCollum at that price. Just a great spot if we see Jimmy Butler sit. It would be really tough to fade him. Like he's been playing a little bit better recently. He's destroyed them last season. So like if Butler sits, like I would be really close to going all in on McCollum in this spot.
Really Portland's pretty easy team to figure out. Like it's the backcourt for me. Aminu's been playing pretty well, but a little bit of a tough spot here. Like he's still pretty cheap. He's only 4,800 on DK. Nurkic, the minutes have still been in the mid to low 20s of late since coming back, but he's a guy that I'm going to throw probably a GPP dart in at his price. He's only 6,200. Last time these two teams played, he only played 23 minutes, but he put up 33 DK points. We've seen him put up DK points in limited matchups against Minnesota in the past. And I don't mind targeting centers against Minnesota. Like I think he's going to go overlooked. So if you're building multiple lineups, like that's kind of how I see Nurkic.
Yeah, I'll touch on Aminu first. Like I know he's been solid recently. It is not a great matchup for him, and like I just don't see why I would pay 4,800 on DraftKings for Aminu. And let's see, what is he on? I'm looking at the wrong game. He is 5,200 on FanDuel. I'm not paying those prices for him when I can get John Collins for cheaper. I can get Kelly Olynyk for cheaper. I can get all these other value options that we talked about. Rashawn Holmes, all these guys are cheaper, have a ton of upside. And Amir Johnson is going to start for Joel Embiid, by the way. Still, give me all the Rashawn Holmes, but like, give me Michael Beasley. Give me some of these other guys over Aminu tonight who are in better spots. So that's a fade for me. And you mentioned Nurkic. If we get news that he's going to be closer to 30 minutes or be close to regular minutes, that's an excellent GPP option against Karl-Anthony Towns, who has no interest in playing defense.
Nope. Yeah, that's kind of it for me on Portland.
Same.
Minnesota here. Obviously, if Butler sits out tonight, he's questionable. It's the same rodeo here. It's Minnesota playing all their guys 35 plus minutes. The front court's a little bit of a tough spot for me now that Portland's kind of back and healthy. So I don't have a ton of interest here really with anyone.
No, I'm not looking at Cat. I'm not looking at Taj here. Just bad matchups all around for both guys. If Butler sits, I don't know if it's going to be Shabazz or Marcus Hunt or Tyus Jones who starts, but all three guys are cheap. You could take a flyer on all them. You will see Wiggins, I believe, has the highest usage rates without Butler. It's 31.4%, 0.9 fantasy points per minute. I guess he's fine, but it's just a guy, like if he's not scoring, like he's not getting you he's not doing anything else for you. So it's really tough to trust him in a bad matchup.
Yeah, Wiggins is tough to use for me either way. It's just, like you said, like the peripheral stats are just not there. Like his price has come down a little bit, but for a guy whose ceiling has been about 37 fantasy points this year, like that's kind of it.
Yeah, like I don't want to go there in a bad matchup for a guy that just can't do anything but score. He racked up 3 steals in the first 2 minutes of the Phoenix game, and he still ended up with 23 fantasy points.
Yeah, he may get off to a hot start tonight, and you'd be like, oh man, Wiggins is going to go to town, and then you realize he finishes the game with 26 fantasy points.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but if you can't have a huge game against the Phoenix Suns, you're dead to me.
Man, yeah. You've been fired up all morning. You should have heard him before the show. His own J was just really, really grinding your gears there.
it's one of those mornings like I went to bed last night and I forgot to put my laundry in the dryer, so I had to redo my laundry this morning. I forgot to plug in my Bluetooth headphones last night, so they were dead. So I'm using my backup, and then Mario and all this other stuff. I'm tilted. It's Monday. Don't get me started.
Let's move on here. Denver and OKC. Starting with this Denver side. It's weird. I don't have a lot of interest in Denver. I kind of just have more interest in the OKC side here.
Surprisingly, I don't have a lot of interest in this game that much at all. Like, it's just not an appealing matchup for me. Um, Jokic is definitely interesting at his price just because Steven Adams is out, but unless he's going to see close to 30 minutes, like it's really tough to pay 8K for him. But again, with no Steven Adams, like some of these guys do come into play. Like I think Trey Lyles, who I've been on for feels like a month now, just continues to just go off. Scored at least 19 points in 3 of his last 4 games. Minutes has still been there for him, and you expect with OKC going small that a guy like Lyles will see plenty of minutes in that front court. So he's kind of a guy that I'm looking at here from Denver. And Emmanuel Mudiay is questionable, so if he sits, like that's a ton of minutes for Jamal Murray, who I would have some interest in here.
Yeah, I don't mind taking like a GPP shot on those guys. I mean, that's pretty much kind of where I see Denver tonight. They're just a GPP team. And you mentioned Jokic. It's, obviously still kind of working his way back. Was a good fantasy points per minute player in their first meeting. Like if you're building multiple lineups, like I think that's where you can look if you want.
Yeah, I hate trying to trust Mike Malone with some of the stuff. Like, what was it, the last game? We got like 3 different starting lineups, and then like Torrey Craig ended up being one of the starters for that game. And then the game before that, Jokic was supposed to start, and then they said he was coming off the bench, and then he didn't even play. I just like the only guys that you can consistently trust on this Denver team are like Will Barton and like Trey Lyles at this point. And that's crazy to think, but I guess if you want to look at Will Barton, he's a guy that you could look at as well. Again, a tough matchup though, because Oklahoma City's defense is pretty stout.
Yeah, it is. And on the OKC side, I mean, for me, it's basically just Westbrook, and he's a guy that I want some exposure to just because this is such a good spot for him, and I feel like he is still too cheap for his recent output. I know he struggled against Denver earlier this season, but a team that he has torched in the past, like 11-2 on DK. His FanDuel price escapes me, but he's cheap there as well. Like I don't mind building around him in a couple lineups.
Yeah, he's fine. I think in all formats, you can look at Westbrook. He's 11-3 on FanDuel. It is a decent spot here against Denver. You would expect him just to kind of be jacking up shots. OKC significantly better at home than they are on the road. He shot. It's kind of interesting to see. He shot 50% from the field on Saturday, and that's like the first time in 17 games he's even been close to being that productive. So if the shot's starting to fall for him, like I think you could look at him. It's a decent spot. I do have a little bit of interest in Carmelo here, just because he's really cheap. Both him and George, like the issue with those guys is the shot's not falling. But with Carmelo at least playing a little closer to the basket, like you would expect him to get a few extra rebounds and stuff like that. So he is a little interesting. I think Jeremy Grant's going to be a guy that a lot of people are on tonight just because Steven Adams is out. And like on Saturday, the talk was, in 2 of the 3 games that Steven Adams sat prior to Saturday's contest, Jeremy Grant went off. He had over 30 fantasy points. He played a bunch of minutes. Something to note with that is that in those prior games, Patrick Patterson wasn't completely healthy. Nick Collison wasn't playing. Against the Knicks, Jeremy Grant only played like 2 minutes at center. Like the entire rest of the time, it was Dakari Johnson, it was Patrick Patterson, and it was Nick Collison. We saw Patrick Patterson play 25 minutes against the Knicks. Like he's got his size and defense is going to be needed against Jokic. If you're going to give me 25, 30 minutes against 2 Pat against the Nuggets, he is just too cheap.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't mind it. Like that's one of the cheap center situations that we can continue to keep an eye on. And yeah, I mean, it's not a bad spot. Like I'm with you there. Phoenix, Dallas. This is a game I kind of like here because of the price tags. Like I'm going to use a lot of probably more the Dallas side here tonight as kind of fillers. Phoenix rotation once again. Like we'll give it our best.
Uh, I liked this game a lot more before the news that Dennis Smith Jr. went through shoot around this morning and is likely to suit up. I liked this game a lot more before that news came out. But I guess on the Dallas side, like I feel like we should be more interested in this game than we actually are because there's so much potential because Phoenix is terrible. But like Harrison Barnes is interesting. Just a guy that has, is going to play a lot of minutes. Its price is really high though. So that's a little concerning. Maxi Kleber, maybe. Like that's kind of where I'm leaning here because like with Dennis Smith Jr. probably coming back, that's less minutes for Barea, that's less minutes for Yogi, that's less usage for Wes Matthews. It's really not anywhere else to go on this team other than Harrison Barnes and Maxi Kleber.
Yeah, it sucks because I mean, really, like Berea's price has come up a little bit now, where you kind of need Smith to be out so we can get a few extra minutes run. Like the usage has been there, like he's been great, but now he's kind of at a price where he's nearing some other guys, that are starters and that are seeing higher usage. Like Brea is more expensive than Goran Dragic tonight on DK by 100.
Yeah, his price didn't just come up a little bit. His price skyrocketed. 10 games ago, he was 4,000 on the nose. He's 6,200 now, so total of $1,200 over 10 games. Like that's just ridiculous. And again, with Dennis Smith Jr. back, like I just don't think he can go there. Yeah, it's really tough now that Smith is back. Like if he sits, then yeah, go for Yogi Ferrell, go for Wes Matthews. But if he plays, again, it's maybe I'm going to call him Maximilian Kleber because that's just a cooler name than Maxi. Like I feel like I'm talking about a tampon when I call him Maxi. So it's Maximilian Kleber from now on.
I like him tonight, actually. I mean, he's only 3,700 on DK. He's 4,400 on FanDuel. Like a decent spot here. Phoenix does allow a ton of rebounds. They're an average rebounding team. They do struggle against power forwards and bigs. Like at his price for 30 fantasy point potential upside, like at 3,700, like he's another one that fits that stars and scrubs build, and it's in a good spot here.
Yeah, he really is in a good spot, and he's been productive whenever he's played minutes. So I definitely don't mind taking a shot there. It's just another one of the value guys that you can look at.
Yep. Dirk at all, who's sadly not that far off in price from him.
I guess if you want to take a shot at 4,600, like I struggled to not write him up just because like I know it's a fast-paced game, but like I mean, there is a path to like 30 fantasy points for him, and at 4,600, that's a solid amount of production. So, yeah, if you want to, go for it.
Let's look at the Suns team. Let's start with the backcourt here. We kind of saw a little bit of a flip of the switch with Isaiah Cannon, and we saw Troy Daniels play extended run here. We saw Mike James, not play. Like Ulis played limited minutes. I'm willing to take a shot on Cannon here at 3,300.
Here's what you do with the Phoenix backcourt. You write all these guys' names on a piece of paper. You put it in a hat. You shake it up. You close your eyes. You reach in and you grab one. And that is the guy that you plug into your lineup tonight.
That's funny that you mentioned that because that's how Jay Triano picks his rotations on a nightly basis.
That's what I was just going to say. Like, I mean, that seems to be what he's doing. Like Mike James was a DNP CD last game. Didn't even see the court. This is like 3 games after they decide to sign him to a fully guaranteed contract. And then like the next day they sign Isaiah Cannon, who just comes in and wrecks everything like a cannonball. But
2 games left.
I'm sorry. I'm done. Like I'm out. I'll see you guys later. No, but like I think you can look at Cannon. Like if the trend is going to continue, like that price is really cheap. Go for it. Tyler Ulis dealing with the dislocated finger. I don't know how that could. I don't know how that's going to affect him. But if you want to take a shot on the backcourt, like I think you're looking at Cannon. I think you're looking at Troy Daniels, who seems to be the only one with secure minutes recently. And is he averaging like 24.5 points on 16 of 24 shooting over the last 2 games, 11 of 16, I think from 3. So like you could look there as well, but I think Daniel's price, there's other guys that you can feel a little bit safer with in that price range.
Yeah, I'm with you. And TJ Warren just kind of continues to struggle without Booker. Price is starting to drop a little bit. He's only 6,300 on DK, but there's better options that I'm going to be looking at than Ingram, or starting at Ingram. Just lost at Warren. I'm all over the place in these last like 5 minutes. The cannonball joke really threw me for a loop.
Yeah, you're welcome. You should, if anyone wants to go back, I think it's last week when I tweeted out the picture of Isaiah Cannon's face on Miley Cyrus's body on that from the like the cannonball thing. So you can go back and look at that.
If you want to throw up your breakfast, yeah, please go.
one of my favorite Photoshop jobs of the last like decade. Yeah, I'm not really looking at Warren. Not looking at Marquise Chris or Dragon Bender. Who Bender actually went bonkers the last game, but again, he played 30 minutes for whatever reason. His minutes have increased, but like we've seen this before with Bender, where his minutes start to increase, and then he comes out one game and plays 6 minutes. So like, I can't trust either of those guys. And then you're going to look at Tyson Chandler in a revenge spot against the Mavericks. Almost always, usually, is the guy that plays the majority of minutes on the first night of a back-to-back. But again, it's Jay Triano, and we've seen this with him before. Tyson Chandler, news comes out that Tyson Chandler is going to start, and then 5 minutes after lock, Tyson Chandler's not with the team due to personal reasons. So,
yeah, it's struggling because Monroe, 30 plus fantasy points in 4 of the last 6 games. Like we've seen Len be excellent the past few games. Like these prices are coming up to the points where it makes them even more, it's a struggle to kind of put them in your lineups that you're taking a higher risk because they're higher price tags when we have, Holmes, we have some of these other guys that we can look at, I think, instead.
Hey, you remember that time that I said I don't think Goran Dragic is healthy?
He's not healthy.
Goran Dragic, elbow, listed questionable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he sits, I think we do have to look at some of these other guys there, like a Johnson, like a Waiters.
Tyler Johnson, baby. Dion Waiters, illness, listed questionable.
Is he really?
Yes. Justice Winslow, knee, doubtful. So that means he's going to play. So, yeah, it could be all the Tyler Johnson and Josh Richardson. And, like, we could end up having, like, 6 Miami Heat players in our lineup now.
Yeah, we got Wayne Ellington's the other guard there.
Yeah.
Man, well, as if we said that game is pretty much the staple game, I think, outside of really or Phoenix Dallas for value tonight.
It's definitely Miami now. Like, just give me all that over Phoenix Dallas. Because like with Dennis Smith Jr. probably playing, there's just no one from Dallas to look at now.
So that sums it up. Phoenix front court, are you taking any shots at all?
Maybe Tyson Chandler. Maybe. Like, it is a good spot for Tyson Chandler, and I have to imagine that he probably goes off here. Let me look and see how he's done against Dallas. Just for the people that want that information.
All 2 of you out there.
Yeah. Because we know there is revenge in Tyson Chandler's heart. Okay, so let's see. 5 games against the Mavericks, 13 DraftKings points, 11.3 DraftKings points, 36.3 DraftKings points, 30 DraftKings points, 40.3 DraftKings points. So if you have hatred in your heart like Tyson Chandler does, go for it with Chandler. Just know that you're probably going to get bent over a table by Jay Triano.
Let's get off this game. Clippers and Spurs. Spurs 10.5 favorites here at 202 or under. Clippers here, a little bit expensive for my taste for the guys that I probably would want to use in this spot. If this was a smaller slate, maybe I'd have a little bit more interest, but I'm kind of more looking at the Spurs here.
Yeah, with Austin Rivers possibly coming back, that kind of just takes the shine off of all of these guys. Like, I think the only person you're probably considering in this spot, well, 2 guys, Milos, not Milos, Milos, Teodos itch. There's the itch at the end, not itch. You can look at him and DeAndre Jordan, whose usage is just insane. I guess I shouldn't say usage, but like just his role in the offense is pretty high, with him getting some assists and all the rebounds and things like that. It's a decent spot for him. So he's kind of the higher price center that I would be looking at here.
Yeah, I'm with you. For me, he's probably more of a DK guy than he is over on FanDuel, just because I don't find myself paying up for him. But yeah, I don't mind him tonight. I mean, he's averaging over 40 fantasy points in the last 5.
Yeah, and I mean at 7,100, like I know it's not a great matchup like against the Spurs, but if for a guy that's probably going to get you over 40 fantasy points, like I'll take that.
Yeah. Also on the Spurs side here, I know you're going to drop some Pau Gasol. You spend hours actually of your time dropping Pau Gasol kind of news and takes here.
Oh yeah. I love Pau Gasol here. Just like against Andre Drummond, whenever I was all over him and he went bonkers, this is another spot where Popovich has really ridden Pau Gasol in the past. He plays a lot of minutes. His last 3 seasons worth of games against the Clippers, against DeAndre Jordan, 2 games with the Bulls, he had 40.5 and 39.5, and then the rest of the games were against the with the Spurs. He had 19, 38.8, 39, 27.3, and 38. 38 this season was one of the games. I'm in love with Pau Gasol here, coming off 2 games where he played fewer minutes. His minutes have trended downwards in games against like Dallas and Houston and Dallas again, but yeah, it's a great spot for him. And
Yeah.
he's basically a lock for my lineups. And by the way, Jimmy Butler went through shoot around, so Tibbs is going to Tibbs.
Oh, he's playing. Yeah, I mean, Gasol's the guy that I'll take a look at. I don't really have any interest in anyone else here. Kawhi's putting up minutes, or putting up points, but the minutes really aren't back yet. He's actually putting up Wiggins lines in basically 15 minutes.
Basically, like he's been producing extremely well in the limited minutes that he's been playing. Obviously you can't play him, but like I think LaMarcus Aldridge is cash game viable at 8,200 on DraftKings. You can pretty much pencil him in for like 40 fantasy points in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely don't mind. Golden State, LA, Kobe night here. 2 jerseys going up on a Monday. This is definitely going to be a game that a lot of people are going to be looking to target just because his pace is far and above here tonight. And we get guys that are kind of out on this Warrior side where they got the studs and you have the value again.
Yeah, like first of all, I just have to say, like I have a trash can across my room, and I'm gonna be like throwing like paper basketballs and yelling Kobe all day long while I'm building my lineups because yeah, it's Kobe day. And you mentioned the Warriors. No Draymond, no Zaza, no Sean Livingston tonight. Nick Young should be back as he's gone through concussion protocol, but I guess you have to start with Kevin Durant and just, I mean, almost 40% usage with all these guys off the floor, like 1.6 fantasy points per minute. Like it is a great spot for him. I do worry a little bit. Brandon Ingram defense is solid, not great. So like maybe he can slow him down. I don't think anybody's stopping Durant right now, but like just kind of had to use him in cash. Like I don't know how you can fade Durant in cash.
I don't either. I mean, GPPs, you can make the case for it. As you said, I mean, Lakers 4th in defensive efficiency against small forwards. Obviously, this year, if we see Durant play a little bit more of the fours tonight as well, like it's a good spot. He's a guy in cash games. Like I do think he's the one you build around. GPPs, you can make the case to kind of look other ways because his price is expensive, and because we said earlier that you have Harden who is cheaper. You can go with Westbrook over Durant as well.
Yeah, I just realized like if you pull up Kevin Durant's player card on DraftKings, dude, he looks like he aged like 20 years since last season. He looks old. He's aged from carrying the load with no Steph. He's averaging like almost 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists in the last 4 games. Like that's just a massive stat line. And in a fast-paced game where you would expect some turnovers as well, like you would imagine that he gets some extra blocks and steals. Yeah, it's just a great spot for him, and great spot for all the Warriors here. Like I think you can look at Omri Caspi, who's coming off a huge game. He's still really cheap. Jordan Bell still really cheap, and the minutes have been like he's been in the mid-20s the past couple games, so you can definitely go there. Andre Iguodala, really cheap. You can look at him. Clay's in a great spot. Quinn Cook's in a good spot. Like if you really need a cheap point guard, like he hasn't really put up a bunch of production, but it's the Lakers, so like you would expect, production to be there for him. So all these guys are in really awesome spots, and I don't mind any of them.
Nope. I mean, Warriors are going to be pretty much a core. Like, I think there will be at least one or two Warriors in all my lineups tonight. I don't see any way around it. Just given the fact that you have Durant, you have Thompson, who I think Thompson isn't really going to be a primary focus for people tonight. But I mean, quietly kind of just averaging right around 34 fantasy points, playing a ton of minutes, and yeah, I mean, good spot against the Lakers.
Yeah, and he had the whole narrative. It's like isn't his dad like a play-by-play guy for the Lakers or something like that? I think that's.
Let's see here. Let's see.
I think he's yeah, Michael Thompson. I thought he was. Maybe he's not. He played for the Lakers. I know that.
This is a broadcaster. All right. Well, let's move on to the Lakers here. Once again, I mean, I think they're in great spots as well here tonight. Up pace game. It's just some of these guys. I mean, there's no one crossing 7K on DraftKings. Lonzo Ball's been playing really well. I can see this being a night where he comes out and plays. Always going to be a GPP guy. That's his middle name right now.
Lonzo guaranteed prize pool ball. Yeah, I love Lonzo here at 6,900. He's been over 40 fantasy points in like 3 of the last 4 games, playing extremely well. Lack of rim protection with the Warriors. You would expect all the assists and rebounds to be there. Like if you're getting a ton of exposure to this game, like I think it starts with Lonzo Ball, and I think your second guy is going to be Brandon Ingram, who like I know he's going to be matched up with Kevin Durant for the majority of this game, but like he put Kevin Durant in a freaking blender every possession last time these teams played. Ingram played 44 minutes, had 50 fantasy points. Like he's been outstanding recently. Minutes have been insane. I really like Ingram in this spot. Like I kind of feel like this is just one of those things where he gets up because he's going up against Kevin Durant, and maybe like Kevin Durant is his idol. Because they're kind of similarly built, lanky guys with arms that are like 12 feet long, but they're bean poles. It's a great spot for Ingram. I think you can look there, and maybe Julius Randle from the Lakers side. I think those are the guys that I'm really looking at here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Brandon Ingram, you mentioned, I mean, I've watched him kind of obviously in that Cleveland game. He does get up for these big showdowns with the stars, and like you said, the minutes are just through the roof. He's only 6,600 on DK. Yeah, I think matchup aside, like he's a guy that I'm going to be trying to get into my lives because I don't know how popular he'll actually be tonight.
I think he'll be pretty popular. Just because, I mean, like I said, he's coming off several good games. He has over 40 in 2 of his last 4, 38, 50, 36, and like over his last 10. But like double-digit shot attempts in all but 1 game. When that shot's falling, like they're just going to him. And again, this is going to be a fast-paced game, a lot of transition. Guys like him and Lonzo really thrive in transition basketball. So I think he's a guy that has just a massive ceiling in the spot.
Yeah, and you mentioned Julius Randle. I don't mind taking a shot with him. Jordan Clarkson's the other one where I think you can toss into a few lives and GPPs. More of a FanDuel play for me, but I don't mind him as well with his usage off the bench.
Yeah, he's fine.
So, anyone else there?
No, I don't really want Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the spot. I think there's better places to go. So that's just pretty much it. Randle, Ball, Ingram, and maybe a little Clarkson.
Yeah, it's very hard to play with a those things that they tie around your ankle so you don't leave.
Yeah, one of those ankle monitors.
Yeah. Let's go highest score below the 10K mark tonight.
Chris Paul.
I'll go Ben Simmons here.
Ooh, nice call.
That's it for us. You can go to dayfantasycafe.com. Cheat sheets will be finalized, making updates throughout the day. Brent's article, GPP article, up on the site. And good luck, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Kobe!